On this Tuesday night, Israel's revenge on Hezbollah. The top commander targeted in an attack on Beirut and the pleas for calm. Venezuela's growing unrest. Protests spread as President Nicolas Maduro is accused of stealing the election. Canada's new Olympic milestone, the latest historic victory, and the heat wave hitting Paris. Plus, reality check. Were dead trees ravaged by mountain pine beetles a major factor in Jaspers wildfire?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There's lots of news to get to tonight, including from Paris and another Olympic medal for Canada. We'll have that for you shortly, but we begin with escalating tension between Israel and Lebanon. Israel has attacked Beirut, Lebanon's capital, hitting a residential neighborhood in what the Israeli military calls a targeted attack. It claims to have killed a Hezbollah commander, but there is no independent verification of that. This is retaliation for a rocket attack on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on the weekend, and the fear is it could be the start of something bigger. Jackson Proskow is following this from Washington. Jackson.
Donna, the missile strike hit an apartment building in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Smoke could be seen billowing from the partially collapsed structure. Israel was quick to take credit days after vowing a severe response to a weekend rocket attack that killed 12 children in the Golan Heights. Israel says it targeted Hezbollah's operations chief, the man it believes was behind the rocket attack, though Hezbollah has denied responsibility. Soon after the strike, Israel's defense minister said that Hezbollah crossed the red line. This is the most significant escalation between Israel and the Iran-backed militant group since October 7th, and tonight the entire region is on edge, with the White House urging both sides to show restraint.
We do not believe that an all-out war is inevitable. That is not something that we believe, and we believe that it can still be avoided. This is a president, you've watched him the last 3.5 years. He believes in diplomacy, diplomatic solutions.
Lebanon has condemned the strike and called it a criminal act and says it plans to file a complaint at the UN Security Council Wednesday. The country's foreign minister called on Hezbollah to show restraint and avoid triggering a further escalation. The question tonight is whether either side makes a next move or if they can walk back from the kind of regional conflict that has been feared for months. This is now the second time since October 7th that Israel has targeted Lebanon's capital. The last time involved the assassination of a senior Hamas leader. Donna?
Okay, Jackson Proskow in Washington tonight, thanks. At least 7 people have died in Venezuela and more than 100 have been arrested as anger spreads over the official results of the presidential election there. Millions of people believe the opposition beat Nicolas Maduro and are demanding to see the voting records. Police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at thousands of demonstrators who reject the official results. Maduro was declared winner of another 6-year term despite available voting records showing the opposition presidential candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, won a majority. Today, the 35-member Organization for American States, which includes Canada, said without public documentary support for the announced election result, they cannot be trusted and should not be recognized. Now to the Olympics. Canada's women's team had already defeated Australia in rugby sevens and then today faced top-ranked New Zealand in the final. They gave it their all but did end up losing. Still, they've made history, winning silver for Canada, the first time that's happened in women's rugby sevens. And as Heidi Petracek reports, the hometown crowd couldn't be more proud.
Go on, Charity! Go on, Charity!
There was hollering in Halifax.
Amazing. Just to put rugby on the map like this.
And cheers in Toronto.
I think we're pretty stoked here.
Fans across the country gathering around screens to watch Canada's women vie for Olympic gold against New Zealand in rugby sevens.
All of Canada is behind you. Toronto Nomads are behind you.
On the East Coast, there are personal connections to the Canadian team on the field across the pond in Paris. Women's rugby sevens coach Jack Hanratty used to coach in Halifax.
He's our adopted son. I think he still has a 902 number and we won't ever let him get rid of it.
Go, Canada, go!
And on the team, there's a sole Maritimer, Alicia Corrigan, the only woman east of Ontario on the roster. Family and friends from her home province of Prince Edward Island made the trip to Paris to cheer her on.
We're just so proud of you, and go get them.
And that's just what she did, scoring in this spectacular fashion. In the end, however, the gold was out of reach.
But being able to come back and prove on the world stage that you are a contender in this sport is worth just as much.
The silver medal is the team's best result since Rugby Sevens debuted at the Games in 2016. An inspiring finish fans and players hope will propel the sport forward here at home. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
The Paris Games got off to a rainy start, and all that stormwater flowing into the Seine River means it is now unsafe to swim in. The men's triathlon scheduled for this morning had to be postponed, but the clouds have lifted and much of France is now under a heat warning. Paris hit 35 degrees today. Crystal Goomansingh is there. Crystal, both spectators and athletes, I guess, forced to endure the heat.
Yeah, Donna, the sun is down now, and it is cooling things off just a little bit. The temperature right now still sitting just under the 30-degree mark. It was one of those steamy summer days when even the breeze felt hot. Beat the Heat was the most popular non-Olympic sport in Paris Tuesday.
We just got these cool towels from Canada Olympic House, which are great right now.
Just keeping well hydrated, lots of water, staying in the shade, and we got the umbrella as well. So
temperatures soared to 35 degrees in the capital. In the south of France, they were even higher. Heat alerts were issued as the host Olympic nation experienced a 2-day heat wave.
And I was at Rugby Sevens yesterday. It was hot, but it was super fun, so you kind of ignore the heat.
This heat for the athletes is a completely different story. For example, the Canadian women's rugby team played 2 matches in these intense conditions. After being in the heat all day, exerting themselves, athletes now have access to air conditioners and not just fans. Paris 2024 officials aspire to host the greenest games in history, but
our responsibility, our short-term responsibility, to give to high-performance athletes the best condition in order to perform. And that's the reason why we've offered them the opportunity to rent temporary AC.
Animal health was also a concern. Riders sprayed down their horses at the dressage event, and many reduced their warm-up ride times. Now, if these conditions stick around and the thunderstorms in the forecast don't materialize, it could be good for the Seine and the men's triathlon. Now, because of poor water quality conditions in the Seine, the men's event today was scrubbed. They had 3 days of poor water quality tests. The heat can help break down some of that bacteria in the Seine, and potentially the event could go ahead. At this point, it looks like it will go tomorrow after the women's event. Donna?
Okay, I guess they have no other alternative venue, so fingers crossed. Crystal Goomansingh in Paris, thanks. Canada is in 9th place in the official medal standings right now with 2 gold, 2 silver and 2 bronze. This is the standings that sorts nations based on their gold medals. Japan is at the top of that list right now with 7, followed by China and then Australia. There's violence in the streets of the British town where 3 young girls were stabbed to death at a Taylor Swift-themed dance and yoga class on Monday. 5 other children and 2 adults are in critical condition. Taylor Swift posted that she is completely in shock. These were little kids in a dance class, she says, and she is at a loss for how to ever convey her sympathies to these families. Police described the attack as ferocious. A 17-year-old boy is in custody, and tonight anger erupted outside a local mosque. Redmond Shannon reports, and a warning, some of the details are disturbing.
An explosion of anger on the streets of Southport. This protest outside a mosque, apparently triggered by online rumours about the identity of the 17-year-old male arrested on suspicion of murdering 3 young girls. The brewing trouble apparently anticipated by Britain's Interior Minister just 2 hours before.
The police must be able to get on with their work, and communities must be given the time and space to grieve and heal without outside voices seeking to use events to stir up division or advance their own views.
The coastal community has been reeling in grief, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. 3 girls aged 6, 7 and 9 killed in what police called a ferocious knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance and yoga class on Monday. 5 more children are critically ill. It's believed yoga teacher Leanne Lucas is among the 2 critically injured adults, praised by police for trying to protect the children.
You know, it's so shocking. We're in a seaside town. Children should be able to enjoy their summer holidays.
After an online tribute message from Taylor Swift, her fans around the world have begun raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Liverpool hospital where the children are being treated. The first responders who tended to the victims were among those to pay respects. Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited the site too.
But there's no pretending that what they had to respond to yesterday was ordinary. It was very, very difficult of them.
Even if charged, the identity of the British-born suspect in custody won't necessarily be made public because of his age. Police say the name being spread online is false and asked people not to speculate. But no one in this protest wanted to listen. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Still in the UK, radical Islamist preacher Anjem Choudhury, whose followers have been linked to numerous plots around the world, was sentenced today to life in prison for directing a terrorist organization. The same judge sentenced Canadian Khalid Hussein, an Edmonton gas station worker who was radicalized by Choudhury, to 5 years. He was convicted last week of being an active member of a terrorist organization. Both men were arrested a year ago after Hussein flew to the UK and landed at Heathrow Airport. In India, multiple landslides triggered by torrential rains have killed more than 100 people in the south of that country. The Indian Air Force was called in to assist in rescue operations today as crews on the ground search for dozens of people still missing in the southern state of Kerala. Cars, houses, and entire roads were swept away by torrents of muddy floodwater. Waiting to go home. Coming up, the evacuees hoping to return as firefighters prepare for another hot weekend in the western wildfire fight. A bit of rain and cooler temperatures have given firefighters in Western Canada a slight reprieve, but it's not enough to dramatically change the wildfire situation. Natural Resources Canada says more than 820 active fires are burning across the country. More than 300 of those are in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. The West is still the hardest hit. British Columbia has at least 340 active fires, and Alberta about 120. Heather Urix West looks at which fires are still keeping thousands of Canadians out of their homes.
Amidst the destruction in the town of Jaspers, a sign of hope. A sacred teepee used for ceremonies honoring the land untouched by the flames, even as structures burned nearby.
A lot of ceremonies were done in that teepee with all the partners and Jasper Park. It was kind of like a sign that we're on the right track, I guess, that it was just untouched. It wasn't even touched at all. Then by the looks of it, not even ashes were on there.
It's been over a week since the Jasper wildfire complex forced the evacuation of an entire national park. In Calgary, evacuees gathered Monday night at a reception centre, anxious for information, as the Alberta government hosted a telephone town hall.
You know, I honestly feel reassured that there's a huge number of layers of support happening for us. You know, federally, municipally, provincially, so I feel like it's pretty organized.
Fire crews are preparing for a hot weekend ahead.
With a little bit of heat and some lower relative humidities, we do anticipate a little bit of fire growth. We're working very hard to ensure that fire growth is not near the community, not near critical infrastructure, and not near any of the outlying commercial areas that are in the park.
Crews in BC are working hard as well. In the Slocan Valley in the central Kootenay region, 6 fires have forced the evacuation of 400 homes.
It's a shock. It's not something we expect to have go from normal life to everything up in the air and possibility of not having a home.
1,200 people have been evacuated in northern Manitoba too, with a dozen fires burning out of control. Evacuation centers like this one in Calgary will remain open until Jasper residents are given the all clear to go home, which officials say can't happen until fire is no longer threatening the community and all services from electricity to grocery stores can come back online. Donna?
All right, Heather in Calgary, thanks. Wildfire fuel ahead. How much of a role did dead trees play in Jaspers fire? Now that the scope of the devastation in Jasper is emerging, there are questions about whether the forest in the national park had been properly managed and what role trees killed by pine beetles may have played in how fast that fire spread. Mackenzie Gray looks into that, along with how much climate change is making wildfires harder to control.
Before the devastating fire rolled through Jasper, residents and experts alike worried about the millions of trees that looked red but are actually dead, killed by the mountain pine beetle infestation that swept through BC and Alberta in the 90s, leading to this warning from Natural Resources Canada in 2005.
Trees killed by the mountain pine beetle create huge fuel reservoirs just waiting for ignition.
And that disaster just played out. But how much did those dead trees play a role?
You know, if you were to ask that question 15 years ago, I think you'd probably get a different response.
Chris Bone has done extensive research on the topic.
Climate is such a main driver of these fires right now that whether they're occurring in mountain pine beetle areas or not, I think is becoming less of a concern.
The drought, heat dome, and high winds that Jasper experienced during the fire all exacerbated the impact the pine beetle trees had.
We had those dead fuels accumulated and then down on the ground contributing to the intensity of the fire. It was a major factor.
And Lori Daniels would know. She studied the fire history of Jasper National Park.
It's these extreme weather events superimposed on those heat domes with a lightning ignition was really just the perfect storm.
As Storm Parks Canada, the organization in charge of managing the forest in the park, believes could not be stopped.
Fire was 300 meters high, 100 meters above the trees.
Parks Canada pointed to prescribed burns and individual removal of dead trees to try and mitigate fire risk, but unfavorable weather conditions made taking those steps a massive challenge.
There is nothing any human on Earth or any piece of equipment could have done standing in front of that wall of fire that would have allowed them to stop it.
How to mitigate that risk is Parks Canada's big challenge, Donna, with the experts we spoke to saying so-called buffer zones need to be better built around communities with wildfire risks to give firefighters a chance to save the next community.
Mackenzie in Ottawa, thank you. Navigating a path to victory next. Meet one of Canada's best hopes of winning an Olympic medal in sailing. She was already the best female gymnast of all time, and today American Simone Biles added to her medal count. Team USA won gold in artistic gymnastics. It is the 5th gold medal for Biles and 8th medal overall. She is now the most decorated American Olympic gymnast in history. She's overcome so much over the years, even competing in Paris despite a calf injury. And Team Canada, it finished in 5th place. The Olympics are a chance for lesser-known sports to shine as well. One of them is competitive sailing. Canada has won 9 Olympic sailing medals in its history. And one name to watch for during these games is Sarah Douglas. The 30-year-old from Ontario just missed out on a medal in 2021. As Turia Isri reports, she is confident she'll be on the podium in Paris.
Competitive sailing is all about holding on. And Canadian Sarah Douglas has one of the strongest grips on the sport.
I just wanted to go sail. So I had no interest in doing the extra things that probably would take the talent like higher and have better success. And I still struggle with that today.
Douglas was born in Burlington, Ontario, but spent much of her childhood in Barbados, where she learned to sail at just 7 years old.
I took a break from sailing when I was like 16 to 18. And when I came back to sailing, I really had like the Olympic dream.
These days, she trains mostly in Europe, but considers home base Ashbridges Bay Yacht Club in Toronto.
It truly does take a village to get sailors to an Olympic Games because of our large financial aspect of our sport.
Competitive sailing is a niche sport, in part because it's expensive and for a long time considered an old boys club. The 30-year-old has broken barriers and records. In her Olympic debut at the 2021 Tokyo Games, she finished 6th, a Canadian best for a female sailor, but not good enough for Douglas.
I had become so close to an Olympic medal and somewhat failed at doing that in that last race.
The women's dinghy competition will actually take place off the coast of Marseille in the south of France, a grueling 45-minute race.
And a Canadian sailor has never won gold. Canadian female sailor has never won a medal. So, I gotta do both.
Not letting go as she navigates her route to victory. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Well, once the competition is done and all the intense training has paid off, athletes can let their emotions show. And after winning her first Olympic gold on Monday, swimming sensation Summer McIntosh posted this throwback photo on social media. I've been dreaming of this moment since receiving my first swim lesson badge at age 3. And for the women's rugby sevens team today, pure jubilation on the podium with their silver medals. They started the year 9th, and here they are. A first for Canada in this sport. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.